campaign and in what capacities you might need help.
Great.
All right, I'm waiting for the little thing to turn red, and once that happens, I think that means we're going live. Okay, hi everybody. Jeanne Casteen here, your Democratic candidate for Maricopa County School Superintendent. And today, I really wanted to focus this week on some of our statewide elections that are happening, because there really aren't a lot. Statewide elections tend to mostly happen in midterm years. As most of you probably recall, Katie Hobbs was elected in 2018. Kathy Hoffman was elected in 2018. But there were other very important races going on. Sandra Kennedy won in 2018, right, Bill?
Yeah. You did.
Okay. So Bill and I actually met quite a while back. It was one of the first speaking engagements that I had when I started my campaign. Boy, I think it was probably March or April of last year. And it was in Legislative District 1. I don't know if you remember that, Bill, but that was the first time that I ever met you.
I remember. And then we had an event out in way west, halfway to LA. We had another event out there on the west side, way out.
That was that was their very first, remember? Yeah, that was another good one. It was their first event. I think what did they call themselves? I don't know, but out there on the west side, they said, please don't use the D word, meaning Democrat, because it was like a dirty word in their community. But we did, and we made it, and there were over 100 people at their very first meeting, which is impressive. So today I have Bill Mundell, and Bill Mundell is a wonderful candidate who's running for the Corporation Commission here in Arizona. Bill is a very active member of the Democratic Party and somebody who I've seen personally is incredibly passionate about improving his corner of the world. So Bill, welcome, and introduce yourself to everybody.
Well, Jeanne, thanks for having me. This is a great way to be able to communicate in this day and age. I got my start. I grew up here in Arizona. I went to high school here, then went to undergraduate school at ASU, and then went to law school in Texas. And then I came back and started practicing law in Chandler. And I got involved. I started my public service career in Chandler. At that time, the police and there was corruption in the police department and in the court system. And the police at that time were stopping people without probable cause, and mainly people of color. And I thought we'd move forward in that regard, but that was over 30 years ago. And so as a result of that, at age 27, I was appointed as the presiding judge in Chandler and served for a number of years in that capacity. And then some people in town, encouraged me to run for the legislature, which I did. I served in the legislature for 6 years. When I was there, I was the chair of the House Environment Committee, where I wrote a bunch of legislation, a lot of laws protecting Arizona's environment, and including a historic law preventing Arizona from becoming a dumping ground for hazardous waste, and then other legislation protecting our rivers, our mountains, and our native plants. And then went back, into private practice as a lawyer in Chandler. And then in 1999, I was appointed to the Corporation Commission by the governor at that time, and I served for 9 years. I was the chair for 2 years, and I served from 1999 to 2008. Couldn't run again because of term limits. And I'm married. I have 2 daughters, and my wife, Barbara, is a retired presiding judge in Maricopa County, first woman presiding judge in the county. And so I decided to run again. I was actually the Democratic nominee in 2016 and came very close to winning. APS in the last 2 weeks of the campaign spent about $10 million to beat me, and I lost by 0.7%. And as you may recall, Hillary lost by 3.5%. So it was a very close election. I decided I wanted to give it another shot. I want to return to the commission, and we can talk about the reasons why during this interview.
Yeah, no, that was actually one of the first things that I was thinking about was, here you are, somebody with all that experience getting termed out, but something really must have called you back to decide to run again. Because I know school board members who do 1 or 2 terms and they're like, yeah, no, I'm good. I'm out. I've had enough of that and I don't ever want to do it again. So what motivated you?
Well, like I said, I was there for 9 years. I know how the commission can run. I know it can run with integrity and ethics. And over the last few years, that hasn't happened. And I tell people, the commission is a 4th branch of government. It's in the state constitution one of only 7 states and one of only 13 states where the commissioners are elected. In those other 37 states, they're appointed by the governor and confirmed usually by the state senate. So the framers of our state constitution in 1912 were concerned about the power of monopolies. And if you think back in history, at that time, the railroads and Standard Oil were the powerful monopolies in the West. And the framers had seen what had happened in the eastern states, where big corporations had dominated the politics in those states. And so they wanted to insulate the commission as much as possible from politics. So A, it's in the state constitution, and B, the commissioners are elected. Well, what does that mean? It's in the constitution. It means that the legislature cannot take away the authority of the commission. Only the people of Arizona can change the state constitution. And in fact, when I first got appointed to the commission, there were only 3 commissioners statewide. And then in 2000, the people of Arizona expanded the commission from 3 commissioners to 5 commissioners. And then you sort of alluded to it in your opening. This is the only statewide race. I mean, there's obviously a race for the U.S. Senate with Mark Kelly, but there's for statewide office, there's no race for governor, attorney general, secretary of state, public instruction, mine inspector, state treasurer. The Corporation Commission this year is the only statewide race. I think that's helpful because most people don't know what the Corporation Commission does. It's been called, and I wish I'd come up with this, but I didn't, but it's been called the most powerful entity in state government that most people know little or nothing about.
Yeah.
And I use the word entity because it's not considered a state agency. It's not part of the executive branch. It's an independent, like I said, 4th branch of government established in the Constitution, as I mentioned earlier. And then I also say, people say, well, what does the commission do? And I say, if you turn on a light or use air conditioning, if you take a shower or flush a toilet, if you cook or heat with natural gas, if you cross a railroad crossing, if you buy gasoline from a gas station, if you invest in stocks or bonds, or start a business, a corporation or an LLC, or you still have a landline, then a decision by the Corporation Commission has impacted your lives. That's the broad jurisdiction that the commission has over the lives of Arizonans. And then additionally, sometimes I'll say it differently. I'll tell people, if you're concerned about climate change, then you should pay attention to the race, the Corporation Commission race. If you're ticked off about unjustified rate increases nonstop by the utilities, then you should pay attention to this race. If you want to make sure that we have clean and sustainable water for our children and our grandchildren, then pay attention to the Corporation Commission race. If you think that corporations should treat workers with dignity and respect, this is the race to get involved in. And then if you're concerned about dark money and how it's corrupted the commission and our democracy in general in Arizona, then please pay attention and get involved in this race. And then lastly, and this seems counterintuitive, and is that the commission, was involved inappropriately, I thought, but it got involved, not the commission per se, but some of the utilities got involved in the public spending issue, public education spending. So if you're concerned about how we treat our teachers and our children when it comes to public education spending, then you should pay attention to this race.
Can you expand on that last little bit about education and how the Corporation Commission can affect spending?
Well, and that's why I said it's counterintuitive. What happened was, if you recall, in the spring of 2018, there were commercials run that were paid for by Pinnacle West, which is the holding company, the parent company of APS, the Chamber of Commerce and the Hispanic Chamber of Commerce out of Tucson. And they spent money on TV commercials saying that we had plenty of public education spending in Arizona. And basically they were supporting Governor Ducey's position on, teachers really didn't need a raise. We didn't need to spend more money on public education. And the commissioners allowed that spending by APS. And that's why I say, we're going to put a stop to that. They should be spending money on building, power plants, solar facilities, transmission lines, spending more money on safety issues, et cetera, and not spending money on issues that have nothing to do with the generation of electricity. So that's why I say it's counterintuitive. And a lot of people ask me that question. It's a great question, because when I talk about it, they say, what do you mean? The commission regulates, monopolies. They regulate government created monopolies, i.e. utilities. And what does that have to do with public education spending? But I hope I've explained it.
Yeah, no, that was, I think I must, and I've seen you speak now a few times, but I don't think I've heard that before. So that's really good information for me to understand better, and I appreciate it. So one other question. So you talk a lot about, and Shay was on here yesterday, and before that, Anna was on here on Monday. But you all talk a lot about conservancy and the environment. Now, do you all have any kind of control then when it comes to, there's been all this talk ever since the Trump administration about drilling for uranium or whatever it is. Like, do you guys would the Corporation Commission be able to control those kinds of environmental issues when it comes to drilling and mining?
Well, we get asked that question a lot, and the way I answer it is indirectly. The commission has secondary jurisdiction. The state agencies that really are involved in that are the Department of Environmental Quality, the Department of Water Resources, and then on the federal level, the EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency. The way the commission could get involved is if there are water companies providing the water. And what do I mean by that? I talked about, if you flush a toilet or take a shower, the commission has jurisdiction. And I should clarify that. The commission regulates 300 private water and sewer wastewater companies, not, the city of Phoenix or the city of Scottsdale or the city of Tempe, et cetera, et cetera. They don't regulate municipalities when it comes to water and wastewater usage, but they do regulate these 300 private water and sewer companies that are mainly in the outskirts of Maricopa County. And when we went to that event out in the west side of town, that was a private water and sewer company in that development. And then mostly in rural Arizona, where the private water and wastewater companies exist. So not directly, but possibly indirectly, depending on who's supplying the water for that drilling. Okay.
So what then? Okay. It's November 4th. You've just been elected to the Arizona Corporation Commission. What are some of the areas that you really, really want to focus on?
Well, when I was on the commission before, I wrote the current requirement in Arizona. They're called the REST rules, REST, Renewable Energy Standard Tariff. They're the rule that requires our utilities to get 15% of their electricity from renewable energy sources, whether it's solar, wind, geothermal, et cetera. Now, that was a pretty good percentage back then. I mean, we started writing it in 2004, and those rules became final in 2006. And at the time, we were on the cutting edge. We were a leader in rooftop solar installation behind only Florida and California, which kind of makes sense based on population. But now we've fallen behind, and it's absurd, really, that we've fallen behind New Jersey and New York in rooftop solar installation. And so we should be the solar capital of the world. With 300 days of sunshine every year, it's ridiculous that we've fallen so far behind. Not only those states, but all our neighboring states have increased their percentage greatly. So one of the first things I want to do when we get there is support Commissioner Kennedy. When I co-authored those rules, they're called the REST rules. As I said, hers are called the CREST rules with a K. Commissioner Kennedy is the chair of my campaign, by the way. She encouraged me to run again. And I said, okay, Sandra, I'll give it a shot. And she's been very helpful in supporting me all over the state. So she has the CREST rules, which increase the percentage to 50% by the year 2028. So number one, we're going to work on day one, getting those rules passed to increase the percentage so we do become the solar capital of the world. We need to also look at the code of ethics that was passed. I've said, there are so many loopholes in it, you could drive a Mack truck through it, because there should be no freebies at all for commissioners from the utilities that they regulate. No gifts, no food, no lodging, no nothing. And we need to amend those code of ethics to change that. We also need to include staff, because what's happened at the commission, there's a revolving door where the commissioners and high-level executives leave the commission and then go and work immediately for the utilities that they've been regulating. We got to put an end to that. So solar energy, renewable energy, and code of ethics. And then there's a whole boatload of other issues. I have a legal pad next to my bed at night, and I wake up and I jot something down, like, we need to do this, we need to do that. This is a great idea. I talked to a guy today that about solar energy, and he gave me some information I hadn't heard before. So I made a note to myself, oh, we got to do that to make it easier for people to install rooftop solar.
Yeah, so, okay, when I first got onto the school board here in the Creighton School District, we had a great, super active board member at the time. Her name was Tiffany Troidel, and now she's Tiffany Troidel Arenas. She and her family moved, so she's no longer on the board, but she was fantastic. And one of the things that she wanted to do was bring solar parking panels to our schools. And it was such a good time for me to get on that board with regards to just kind of understanding how things work, how barriers are put in the way. And one of the things that I learned, we have 9 schools in a normal school year, although right now we have one under construction, so it's 8. But some of the schools are APS and some of the schools are SRP. So when we were finally able to, bring that to the board and put in those solar panels at Excellencia School, which is on McDowell in the 51, it was only because that it was SRP that we were able to do that. I recall there being a whole bunch of weird rules and kind of obstacles put in the way. Can you maybe speak to that, the difference between those two providers and why there were obstacles for one, but not so much for the other?
Yeah, that's a great question. The commission does not regulate SRP. And the reason why is it's considered a quasi-municipality. Remember I said earlier, the commission doesn't regulate cities and towns, water systems, and et cetera. Well, they don't regulate SRP for rates or for solar installation. They do have jurisdiction. I should have mentioned this earlier, not only SRP, but all utilities in the state. The commission decides what type of power plants are built, whether it's coal, natural gas, or solar, and also where the major transmission lines are placed in the state of Arizona over 69 kV. They don't decide, the wires to your house or your business or your school for that matter, but the big transmission lines, the commission was given that authority back in the 70s, and they decide that. So that's the difference. And that's a classic example of how really the commissioners, and it's been the Republican commissioners, current and past, that have gutted everything that we did when I was there to encourage rooftop solar, not only for homeowners, but for schools and for businesses. And they've gutted most of those things, making it much more difficult, even from a cost standpoint. And you asked me earlier, what do I want to do when I get back to the commission? I want to protect families from unjustified nonstop rate increases. And I also, people forget, schools pay electricity bills. And if you're paying money for higher electrical costs, you can't use that money for other things that might be available for new buses, et cetera. I mean, there are some, obviously, this stuff better than I do on statute what you can spend the money on, but you're paying electricity bill, and a higher electricity bill, instead of spending it on something else that a school could use. So that's the other thing we need to do. And in fact, when I was on the commission before, and I tell people this, I said, not only did I vote against rate increases when I didn't think they were appropriate, I also voted to decrease electricity rates for APS and Tucson Electric in Tucson when it was appropriate. And so that's the other thing we need to do. We need to have commissioners that are doing their homework, asking probing questions, and not just rubber stamping every rate application that's put before them by a utility, whether it's electricity, gas, water, et cetera. But your question was a great question. It gave me an opportunity to explain the different jurisdiction because the commission does not regulate, as I said, SRP for solar or for their rates.
Yeah, and it's been really a huge money-saving opportunity for us as a district, and just that one school. And to think if we could, be able to install those at each and every one of our schools, the savings, and like you said, that we could, spend it on capital budget things, right? So it could be towards, improving our air conditioning, or, right now, because everybody's putting, plastic panels up to keep people safe, that money could be spent there. But instead, we're going to be getting some CARES Act funding, the schools are, but we already know that we're going to be spending about $500,000 probably as one tiny K-8 district in Phoenix on PPE. And so it's just like, it's very, very frustrating when you have these corporate interests, because we're already dealing with the corporate interests of a lot of, vouchers and, perhaps, some charter schools who, there's some great charter schools out there, don't get me wrong, but there are also some that really all they care about is turning a profit. And so when public schools are constantly having to deal with those kinds of corporate interests, it becomes really frustrating. And again, maybe that's why some former board member friends of mine say, never again, I don't want to do this ever again.
Well, let's talk down the road about getting some more solar on those other schools. People always say, well, Bill, don't say when you get elected, and I say, if I get elected. They say, no, you should say when you get elected. And I say, well, it's kind of my Midwestern background. I don't want to sound too cocky and say, when I get elected. I say, if I get elected in November, then we move forward and let's continue that dialogue about how do we get those other schools with rooftop solar on them.
So wait, I didn't realize, where in the Midwest are you from, Bill?
I grew up a suburb of Chicago. My dad was in the military. Both my parents are buried at West Point. After that, my dad then worked for Motorola, and we grew up in Northbrook. I grew up in Northbrook and went to Glenbrook North for a couple of years. And then my parents moved out my junior year of high school and I went to high school here, my last 2 years of high school, like I said earlier in the opening. And then I went to ASU and then law school in Texas. But I grew up in a suburb of Chicago, Northbrook. Had a paper route, Chicago Tribune.
So I'm from a very, very small town. It's not even a suburb, really. It's called Marengo, Illinois. Have you ever heard of it? Okay.
And go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say my campaign manager is actually from Belvedere, Illinois. So it's kind of fun.
Right. I know your campaign manager very well. And that's where my dad was born, in Belvedere. She and I've had that discussion on numerous occasions. He was born in Belvedere and then went off to West Point, left, Belvedere and went to West Point, and then, that the rest is history. But my aunt was a math teacher at Peoria, high school.
Oh, wow. That's so, yeah, I had
Peoria, Illinois. Let me be clear. Peoria, Illinois.
Peoria, Illinois. Well, in Peoria, Arizona was actually a bunch of people from Peoria, Illinois who decided to move to Arizona. That's how they weren't very original with the naming of things. So that's how Peoria, Arizona got its name. So let's talk a little bit about where you are with your campaign, because I know that you and Anna and Shay are all clean elections candidates. I know that you have your fives, but I believe that you all can still be taking in seed money. So tell us where your campaign is at right now.
Well, yeah, and let me just explain what clean elections is. It's public financing in Arizona. We had to go out and get 1,800 $5 contributions, and we're not taking any money from corporations or their PACs or their lawyers, their lobbyists, or their executives. But we did have to go around and get 1,800 $5 contributions, and then we qualify for funding. And let me just say this, I'd be remiss if I didn't say it. I'm very fortunate to be running with those two dynamic women, Anna and Shay, and we'll be doing some things together going forward. And so I've gotten mine, I've filed, and I've gotten my funding. It's in the bank, so to speak, and we'll be utilizing that money in the near future to buy signs and things of that nature, that you do in campaigns. So you haven't seen any signs up yet because we just got our funding, and we'll be going forward in the near future with all those things. Yes, we can still collect what's called seed money. There's a limitation for clean election candidates of $170 per person, which is different than traditional funding. I don't remember what the figure is, $5,500 for you guys or something else, right? 5,000.
$6,450. In case anybody wants to max out, you can go to mc.com, $6,450. Yes.
Well, I was giving you a pitch there. That's what I say. But in any event, we can collect $170 per person. And again, we're not accepting any PAC money or anything of that nature. So yeah, and you can go, I think you put it up, it's Mundell2020.com. And then my Facebook is Bill Mundell for Corporation Commission. And we put a lot of good stuff on there about what's going on at the commission and different issues, not just, what a great guy I am, what a great candidate I am. It's really more focused towards all the issues that we talked about going forward at the commission. And right now with the virus, people are really going to be getting hit hard with electricity bills because they're home. they're not at their business or kids at school. They're all home right now. And so they're using more electricity. And so that's something we need to look at. You asked me, what do we need to look at? We need to look at that, because people are going to get hammered with electricity bills because they're at home using, their air conditioning and their computers and everything else. So that's something that Commissioner Kennedy has been pushing on at the commission, but she can't get any other support from her colleagues. And let me just do this real fast, because I think it helps people. These numbers: 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. There are 5 commissioners statewide. There are 4 Republican commissioners right now. There are 3 seats open in November. We want to win at least 2, and obviously now all 3, to get a majority and make Commissioner Kennedy the chair. And then, as I indicated earlier, there's only one statewide race, and that's this race. And so that's what we're doing going forward. We really need to look at protecting families from these high electricity bills that are going to start occurring, because even if you have time of use, or you hopefully don't have demand usage, because then you're really going to get hit hard.
Yeah. So, that makes me think of another question. Aside from the rate increases, how else do you think that the Arizona Corporation Commission can help ease some of the fallout from our COVID crisis and what's been happening with regards to the disease, the leadership from the state, et cetera? What can they actually do?
Well, they can provide, there's already a low income funding mechanism that the utilities have to help people that are having trouble paying their bills, and we can increase that and make sure it's being utilized. There's a bunch of monies sitting in it right now that Commissioner Kennedy again discovered, and it's ridiculous. And you remember we had that the disconnection of that elderly woman out on the west side. She was in her 70s, and APS shut off her electricity, and she only owed $51, and she had a deposit that would have covered it. That's outrageous. That should never happen again going forward. And we're going to put a stop to that. In January, Commissioner Kennedy pushed for emergency rules that were adopted that prevented shutoffs occurring from June 1st to October 15th. We need to look at that, and also making sure that people like elderly, pregnant women, people with medical conditions, their electricity is not shut off. Shutting off electricity should be a last resort by the utilities, not a first resort. So we need to expand those low-income programs and really aggressively monitor who they're shutting off, which wasn't done.
Yeah, that was a really tragic story, and again, it just makes me. I'm really happy about first of all, the caliber of candidates. You have a proven track record of leadership. You have a deep understanding of this job, and whether it's a state position like yours and Shay and Anna, all the way down to school board candidates, I'm really excited about the energy that's happening in 2020. And look at us. I was saying it yesterday that it's not a coincidence that we are last in education and number 1 in COVID. And unfortunately, it's just a lack of leadership, and so I can't wait. Well, we already voted for you, my husband and I. We voted for all 3 of you, of course.
Thank you.
Of course. And so I can't wait, because here we, like you said, 100 or over 300 days of sunny days every year, and we don't see a sea of solar panels. It just doesn't make any sense. So I want to honor your time, Bill, because I know running a statewide campaign, I thought it was hard running a countywide campaign. You all must be crazy, because Arizona has a lot of nooks and crannies, and you guys are all over this state. I mean, I imagine probably not so much anymore, but still, you're running that campaign from your house, and it's not an easy task. So thank you for running as well. But so the people know more about Bill Mundell. What is a fun fact about you that perhaps people wouldn't know or would never guess?
Well, I don't know if they'd never guess it about it. I'm a dog lover. I just had my yellow lab passed away, and so that just recently. And so I'm a dog lover. And number 2, I used to be a pretty darn good racquetball player. As I've gotten older, a little slower and not quite as good, but I think those are the 2 things. And I love to hike and, around the state. And as I said earlier, when I was in the legislature, I sponsored legislation protecting the Phoenix Mountain Preserves from development. So I guess I'd say, I'm a dog lover, especially yellow labs, all dogs. used to be a pretty darn good racquetball player. And so I think those are a couple of fun facts that people may not know.
Do you camp at all?
Yeah, but we hike more than we actually camp. We actually hike and then probably stay someplace close to where we're hiking.
There you go. There you go. I think they call that glamping, right?
Well, a friend of mine said my idea of roughing is black and white TV. So that was years ago. So yeah, we go. We love getting out. We love going to all over the state and all over the West and visit the national parks that we need to protect.
Yes. Yes. Arizona is one of the most beautiful places in the world. And I can't wait until you are in that position again so you can protect it and keep Arizona beautiful. So thank you, Bill, for coming on today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you very much, Jeannie. And I just say one last thing. Commissioner Kennedy used to say that start at the bottom of your ballot and vote up. So Jeannie, so people vote for you, vote for the commission and all the down ballot races and move up, to Mark Kelly at the top.
Absolutely. Bottom up. That's right. And you know what? Julian Castro said that at the winter convention last year. We need to build it from the bottom up. And I know that he was kind of just talking about grassroots organizing, but that means going from our school board candidates all the way to the top. So
exactly.
Yep. Well, thanks, Bill. It was really nice to see you. It's been far too long and I can't wait until we can see each other face to face again.
Thanks for having me. It was great.
Sure. See you later.